but he has no weapons. If you've ever been a fan of a team with a highly touted, young, underperforming quarterback, you've probably heard this said over and over again. Usually, when a team drafts a quarterback in their top 10 picks, the supporting cast tends to stay bad for at least the rookie season. And if the rookie quarterback struggles, it's a vessel for the redundant excuses. These aren't invalid claims usually, as being a rookie quarterback can be a real fish out of water experience, but fans occasionally use this to mask the deficiencies of these quarterbacks. And I don't blame them. It's tough to rationale against the no weapons argument. It's a fantastic fallback point for a plethora of scenarios. Whether you're defending said highly touted young quarterback against hate, or if you're trying to tell yourself that it isn't over with him at quarterback. It's a low effort point that's super strong and versatile. With it being an excuse instead of an argument, by nature it lacks nuance and sets discussion into an either or affair. The thing is though, there's some truth to it. In fact, there's a lot of truth to it. It's practically common sense that poor support around a quarterback, especially a young one, could significantly hinder his play. Some quarterbacks are able to rise above that and either produce, win, or just prove that they're extremely capable. Others, though, sink to the level that they play with and are just that bad to prove that they aren't failing because of the supporting cast. They are part of that cast. But for a span in their career, most quarterbacks fall into some form of in-between. A position where fans question if he could be the guy pops up. And eventually, they fall into a category. Most falling to the bust territory, but a rare few linger in that purgatory, teetering between the two extreme sides for an extended period of time, raising heated and passionate debates on whether he's deserving of the quarterback title. The poster child of that is Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones has never been officially labeled as the franchise guy, but remains on the team. He still gets the lack of weapons excuse, and fans still seem to love him even with his lack of production. He's the definition of on the quarterback fence. To stay in this type of no man's land, you'll need just two things. One, a poor situation for an extended period of time, and two, you need to be a high draft pick. No, seriously, just having those two things will keep you excused from criticism for at least a couple of seasons. Daniel Jones has had them both. But even with these two things, it wouldn't last forever. Even if you never prove to be bad by sticking it up in an alright situation, fans' patience wears thin quick. And even with the most dire of situations, you better show something in at least 3 seasons or you're done. The thing is though, Daniel Jones might enter his 6th season as the New York Giants starting quarterback. How? How is he stretched a 3-year max window into 6? Well, the truth is, Daniel Jones has been lucky. Really lucky. Wait. I know this may sound insane, but just listen to me for a second. At face value, he's been unlucky in terms of his surroundings. A shuffling deck of coaches, poor or consistently injured pass catchers, and for his entire career, an abysmal offensive line. But that might have actually extended his career as the Giants quarterback. I think you may have pieced it together through my opening monologue, but Daniel Jones has always had a fallback excuse through his NFL career. No matter how poor the play was, a significant amount of fans harped on a lack of weapons and poor play calling as the reason, which was true to an extent, but it's not that black and white. Two things can be true at once. A quarterback can be bad along with his situation. That's kind of how bad offenses work. So why do people defend him? It brings up point numero dos. He was a high pick. Fans of teams are delusional. None more delusional than NFL ones. So if they get a highly drafted quarterback, they'll believe with everything inside of them that he's the guy and have a hard time coming to terms with the fact that he's not. Hear that with a bad situation and fans got all the ammo they need to defend their guy. But that combo only lasts 3 years before you fall out of favor with the front office and the fans. Where did this luck come from? How did Daniel Jones evade his imminent fate year after year? How did he last 6 years as the Giants starting quarterback? In 2019, Daniel Jones was drafted, much to the fans' dismay. They thought he was a disgusting reach by the current GM Dave Gettleman, and were certain that he'll fail.
Who is it? Oh my fucking god! Oh my fuck! You gotta be fucking kidding me! You've gotta be fucking kidding me! How did they take Daniel Jones? How did they fucking take Daniel Jones? The New York Giants just took Daniel Jones over Josh Allen! They took Daniel Jones over Josh Allen and Dwayne Haskins! How the fuck does this happen?
What? Oh no! No! They did not take Daniel Jones! Are you fucking kidding me?
Those people didn't look so good after Jones's rookie year. It wasn't perfect or anything. His year was chock full of turnovers with 18 lost fumbles and 12 interceptions. But on the flip side, if he didn't get injured, he probably would have broke the rookie passing touchdown record. Optimism was in the air after that season. That didn't last. The turnovers continued to haunt him in year 2, except this time, his stats didn't back him up. His old offensively minded head coach, Pat Shurmur, got canned and was replaced with Joe Judge, a special teams coordinator from New England, who was paired with Jason Garrett, who ran the most vanilla offense imaginable, and Patrick Graham. Even with the poor statistical season, Daniel Jones had a long stretch of games where he didn't turn the ball over, and he nearly got the Giants into the playoffs in a horrific NFC East division. Giants fans entered the offseason with a mix of emotions. Sure, Daniel Jones had cut down and nearly cut out the turnovers that had played 1.5 out of his 2 seasons, but the numbers he posted weren't all that great. Fans in the front office decided to pin this on the lack of weapons, with even John Mara stating, "We've done everything to set this kid up for failure," which, to be fair, was true. They did. Dave Gettleman needs to be put on terrorist watch for the roster he put around Daniel Jones. And with that sentiment, they decided that the next course of action and the main goal of the next offseason was to add as many weapons possible for Daniel Jones. Certainly, things would be great now that they had their coach of the future in Joe Judge, right? That's exactly what they did. They signed Kenny Galladay into a massive contract, picked up John Ross, and instead of selecting Justin Fields, who actually fell to them at 11, traded down to 20, collecting a first-round pick next year to pick another receiver in Kadarius Toney. The Giants sure got their team now. Nothing's gonna stop them, and Daniel Jones will prove he's top 10 with weapons. Hear that? That's people lying to themselves. Going to the next season, there was a sense of optimism. Joe Judge potentially being their coach and Daniel Jones potentially being the guy. Giants fan knew at least one thing for certain. This year would answer all the questions they had about Jones, but hopefully secure the coaching and QB duo that they could have. That entire sentiment crumbled to dust. Kenny Galladay flopped heavily. Didn't catch a single touchdown. Kadarius Toney initially showed a lot of promise, dropping an 189-yard game against the Cowboys, but he'd get injured at every strong gust of wind. Joe Judge divulged into a near lunatic as his team's record got worse and worse. His press conferences turned into psychotic rant sessions, and Daniel Jones was stuck in the middle of this. He wasn't performing well, and the matter was made worse when his season got prematurely ended with a neck strain. This disastrous season ended in a 4-win total and gave us this gem right here. Judge gone, Gettleman gone, staff gone. The Giants made it clear that they were turning a new page. They brought in Joe Schoen and Brian Dable to fix this mess, and with all that happening, the writing had to be on the wall, right? Daniel Jones had to be gone. Not only were the Giants trying to start fresh, but their usual 3-year deadline that most QBs have to prove themselves has passed. There was no reality where the Giants could retain him. Well, this is where the luck part comes in. The organizational scrub down took place in 2021, and even though the Giants had the 5th and the 7th pick, the 2021 class was regarded as one of the all-time worst quarterback classes, as the only first-round pick, Kenny Pickett, was picked at 24 and is unbelievably ass. When you combine the lack of a realistic better option with the Daniel Jones was giving no chinks rhetoric, then they were easily able to justify not spending premium picks on pure doo-doo. Realistically, the Giants were going into the season knowing they'd probably have to get rid of DJ. He had overstayed his 3-season welcome and was left over from the older G. The writing was on the wall. There was no universe where Daniel Jones was going to be back after that season, except the one where he led the Giants to their first playoff appearance in 6 seasons, had career highs in rushing and efficiency with probably the worst receiving core in the league, and gifted Giants fans the one thing they fear the most: hope. In most of their eyes, after the year he just had, he was their franchise quarterback. They felt smitten with him, and some regarded him as a top 10 quarterback. They were wrong, by the way. The Giants even handed him an insane $40 million bag, locking him in for 4 more years. They added a couple more pieces, filled some holes, and rolled into the season prepared to build on that playoff appearance they had. And with Darren Waller now in the building, Daniel Jones' numbers will explode. Absolutely not. From game 1, it was disaster. The offense especially. It was due to historically awful offensive line. Andrew Thomas suffered an injury that kept him sidelined for nearly half the season. With Evan Neal bordering on terrorist territory, it turned an already bottom 10 offensive line into the worst of all time. The beating Daniel Jones took on a weekly basis was so hard to watch. Eventually, Daniel Jones injured his neck in the Dolphins game and then later tore his ACL. Tragedy for both sides. He faded into the background, watch the insanity run of Tommy DeVito, and the Giants fall out of playoff contention. As it stands, there's a decent shot that GJ stays on the Giants. He might potentially avoid his fate of being booted without ever achieving being a good quarterback. How? Well, if you go year by year, after the deadline right now, you'd see that the luck that I've been mentioning is nothing more than lack of opportunity. Even today, there's a chance that Jaden Daniels is picked before 6, and they'd be forced to settle again for Jones. But there is also a fact that he got drafted to the Giants, who are very emotionally connected to their players. The reason I'm making this video is because a large group of people claim that DJ needs to stay on the team because of the horrible situation he found himself in. And like I mentioned at the top of the video, it's a common theme with almost any team with a young, struggling quarterback. Why? Oh, they don't want to admit that a guy that their team invested so much in, a guy that they were so excited for, is a bust. So subconsciously, they take something that's partially true and stretch it to what they want. Daniel Jones is special, really special. The reason so is that aside from having as bad of a situation as you possibly can, to them, it looked like he fought through it and had himself an elite season. Well, that's more of a Dable accomplishment, to be honest. He brought them through a magical drought-ending season. That built an emotional connection far stronger than your average quarterback would have. I don't think he's good, or that he should remain after the season. But for many fans, especially young ones, they yearn to keep that magical 2022 season in their hearts and the emotional connection with Jones. Call me cynical, but I don't feel that. I think Daniel Jones is a very flawed quarterback. Keeping him instead of investing in one now will set the franchise back. And while he is in a bad situation, he has some really detrimental traits that will still hold the Giants back even if they put the pieces around him. Even though Daniel Jones is the most intriguing example of this phenomenon, he's not the only one receiving the label. Zach Wilson, similar to Daniel Jones, has extended the original parameters of his welcome. No, he has been with the Jets for 6 seasons, but he's made a remarkable evasion of being cut or booted off the team. Not a lot of guys have gotten benched in their second season, gets back in the same season due to injury, Mike White's ribs, play unbelievably terrible again, managed to stay in the QB2 role behind Aaron Rodgers, somehow starts again, torn Achilles, plays terribly that entire season to the point that he has to be benched again, gets reinstated, plays bad again, and somehow the general public is on his side. Yes, I said it. Zach Wilson has been getting a lot of love, but unlike Jones, it's been from around the NFL instead of from the Jets fan base. And the excuses has been similar to Jones. The offensive line is terrible. The receivers outside of Garrett Wilson is terrible. Daniel Hackett is a terrorist. All of these have been excuses that NFL fans have generously paid out to Wilson, which is a strange turnaround from the narrative last year. At the end of last season, he was the laughingstock of the entire NFL. He was labeled as a bust and considered a villain that ruined the championship level Jets defense. So what happened? Did his play get better? Did his play get better? Absolutely not. His stats look relatively the same, and his impact on losing has gotten more prominent. The situation wasn't that much worse from last year either. The offensive line was worse, yeah, but he had Breece Hall back and a defense that was gifting them shutouts on a weekly basis. So how did the narrative shift? I think the shift was based on ignorance. Let me tell you why. On Sunday Night Football, Week 4, on the biggest stage against the defending championship Chiefs, at the peak of the Taylor Swift hype, Zach Wilson walked into MetLife Stadium and outplayed Patrick Mahomes. 9 weeks later, he met up with Rookie of the Year frontrunner and MVP candidate CJ Stroud. He absolutely fried them and outplayed CJ Stroud. Did this change the narrative around him entirely? Yes and no. While these wins are nice and all, it's important to mention that the majority of Jets fans do not mess with Zach Wilson. The guys who watch him on a weekly basis and see him absolutely fire dots to the free safety. Why is this significant? Well, those 2 games did shift the narrative around Zach Wilson slightly, but it was only across the NFL fan base. As if you saw Zach Wilson outplay the best quarterback in the NFL, you'd change tune about it. But as the weeks passed and Zach Wilson reverted back to his regular dookie self, NFL fans didn't go back to calling him a fraud and assuming the game was a fluke. They changed gears and blamed it on the Jets. I assume their line of thinking was, he played really well in that one game against the Chiefs, so it can't be on him. It amplified when he had another great game against the Texans. Zach Wilson's situation is really interesting, because traditionally, it's the NFL team's fan base who are sticking with the guy, and the general public calling them delusional. But it was the opposite with Zach. These 2 quarterbacks show the versatility of the argument. Some use it out of ignorance, which is in Zach Wilson's case, when they truly don't know how bad he is, and the others use it out of desperation. This one is more common. Either way, I think it's time you retire this argument. Not because it's 100% invalid, just because it's too valid in a way. Now, some people think it covers a guy throwing 3 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. Honestly, if you're at the end of year 2 and you're still producing poorly, it becomes less of the offense around you is bad, and more you're part of
of that bad offense. Two things can be true at once. You could be bad along with the offense around you. Majority of the time, this argument is misused. I mean, the only quarterbacks in the NFL who this accurately represents is Justin Herbert and maybe Patrick Mahomes. It is far less prominent than you think. At the same time, the lack of weapons, they do squander a quarterback's potential, which happened to guys like Sam Darnold and is happening right now to Bryce Young. Overall, potential could be squandered if it isn't acted upon quick. That's especially true in the NFL. Once you waste the potential, it's almost impossible to get back.